a young man named Ray, is getting official papers in the mail. He's been selected to compete in something called the Long Walk, a brutal competition that the whole nation watches on TV. The winner gets everything: money, fame, and even one wish that will be granted, no matter what it is. The catch? You have to be the last person alive. Ray gets ready to leave, and his mom goes with him to see him off. During the trip, we learn about how terrible things are in this world. A long time ago, a huge war destroyed everything. Cities were left in rubble, and families barely have enough to get by. For most people, the Long Walk is the only chance they have to escape poverty, but only 50 young men get picked every single year. Ray's mom is absolutely terrified that she'll lose her son. She practically begs him not to go through with it, but Ray won't change his mind. He tells her this is something he has to do. When they finally get there, she hugs him as tight as she can, but Ray promises he'll come back to her and walks away. Once he's there, Ray meets another contestant named Peter. The two of them hit it off right away and became friends. They also meet the other walkers, including guys named Hank, Baker, Stebbins, and the youngest one there, a young man named Curly. Then the person running this whole thing finally shows up. Everyone just calls him a Major. He walks out and starts calling each contestant's name, one after another. Each boy steps forward, takes a metal tag with his number on it, and goes back to his spot. After all 50 have gotten their tags, the Major gives them a speech. He tells them that the country still hasn't recovered from a war. Towns are falling apart, businesses are struggling, and people have lost hope. But every year, the Long Walk brings excitement back and gives everyone something to look forward to. That's why this competition exists, to show everyone that staying strong and never giving up is how you survive. After his speech ends, he goes over the rules very carefully. Every person has to keep walking at least 3 miles per hour, no slower. If someone slows down below that speed, they get a warning. Slow down again, that's a second warning. A third time means big trouble, and if they mess up a fourth time, they're out of the competition for good, and by out, he means dead. There's no finish line, no place where you can stop and rest, and only one person will make it out alive. Then the Major pulls out a pistol, fires it into the sky, and just like that, the walk officially starts. All 50 boys start moving forward, and behind them are several trucks filled with armed soldiers. Ray mentions how empty and depressing everything looks around them. And another competitor named Barkovich explains that the Major doesn't let crowds gather at the beginning. People who live along the route can watch from their homes if they want, but that's it. However, there are cameras everywhere, filming every single step, so people watching at home don't miss anything. After they've walked about 7 miles, some of the guys start talking about what they do with the grand prize. Baker admits he's only doing this for the money, but Ray disagrees. He thinks there are things more important than just being rich. A little while later, another contestant named Harkness shows up with a small notebook. He's writing down everyone's name and number because he's planning to write a book about the Long Walk. He figures if he survives, the book will make him rich and famous. But Peter makes a good point. If Harkness actually wins, everyone will already know who he is, so he won't even need the book. Meanwhile, the youngest walker, Curly, starts having serious problems. His legs are killing him, and he can barely stand up straight anymore. Ray grabs his arm to help keep him moving, and Peter tries to encourage him with kind words, but Curly is hurting so badly that he ends up falling down on the road. Even after getting 3 warnings, he still can't get back up, so one of the soldiers walks over to shoot him, and finally he dies. Seeing this shocks Ray so much that he accidentally slows down, and a soldier gives him a warning, too. Luckily, Peter notices what's happening and quickly pulls Ray forward before things get worse. The Major makes an announcement about the boy who just died and tells everyone else to keep walking because more people are going to die before this is over. After walking even further, the group hits the 17-mile point. Ray admits he's already completely exhausted and doesn't know how much longer he can keep this up, but Peter tells him not to think about how far they still have to go. He says to just focus on putting one foot in front of the other and taking it moment by moment. As more time passes, Ray, Peter, Hank, and Baker start to really bond and become close friends. But then, just when things seem okay, the heat and exhaustion become too much for contestant number 1. His body completely shuts down and he collapses, having a seizure right there on the road. Some of the walkers are really worried about him, but Barkovich actually starts laughing and making fun of the boy's suffering. The soldiers give him his warnings, and when he doesn't get back up, they shoot him. Shockingly, Barkovich celebrates this death and tells everyone they should be happy because now their chances of winning are better. By the time they reach 25 miles, Barkovich starts picking on a boy named Rick. First, he makes fun of his name, then he goes way too far by insulting Rank's mother. Rank gets so angry that he swings his fist at Barkovich, but he misses and falls hard on the ground. The other walkers are yelling at him to get up, but he can't move fast enough, and finally, the soldiers shoot him dead. This makes Ray and Peter absolutely furious, and they accuse Barkovich of basically murdering him. But Barkovich says it wasn't his fault because he never even laid a hand on the guy. Later on, another contestant desperately needs to use the bathroom. He can't keep walking and starts slowing down. The soldiers start giving him warnings, but he doesn't speed back up, and finally, they shoot him while he's wetting himself in front of everyone. Eventually, night comes, and the boys are running on pure willpower at this point. Ray starts falling asleep while walking and even has a dream about his mother. But Peter shakes him awake and tells him he needs to stay focused. Ray says how much he misses his mom, and Peter tries to comfort him by saying he'll see her again soon. As the hours keep dragging on, Ray slows down without even realizing it and gets a second warning. Not much later, he stumbles again and gets his third warning. We learn that after you get 3 warnings, the only way to clear them is to walk perfectly for 3 straight hours without any mistakes. Peter tries to help him and keep his spirits up, but Ray gets angry and lashes out at him. He accuses Peter of just pretending to care, and says that Peter secretly wants him to collapse, so his own odds of winning go up. Soon, the walkers have to climb a really steep hill, and this climb ends up being deadly for several of them who slow down too much and get shot on the spot. Ray pushes himself as hard as he can, but almost gives up halfway through. Right then, Peter grabs him and helps steady him, telling him he can't stop now. This really touches Ray, and he apologizes for snapping at Peter earlier, saying he didn't mean any of it. Peter tells him not to worry about it and helps him catch his breath. By the next day, the group has covered 59 miles, and Ray is starting to fade again. He asks Peter to keep talking to him so he doesn't lose focus. Ray then admits something important. He wants to win not just to survive, but because he feels like he has some bigger purpose he needs to fulfill. Around the 67-mile mark, Hank is barely holding on. He's walking really weakly and unsteadily. And when Peter tries to check on him, Hank just snaps at him with insults before stumbling forward. Harkness is in even worse shape though. His ankle is twisted badly, and he's struggling to keep up with everyone else. He gets a warning for slowing down, and Ray tries to encourage him to keep going, but Harkness's body just gives out completely. Then he's out of warnings, and finally, the soldiers execute him right there. Ray and Peter are heartbroken by his death, but Barkovich mocks them and suggests they should write a poem or a song to remember their friend. Peter completely loses his temper and calls Barkovich a murderer again, which starts another huge argument. When the group finally reaches the 100-mile milestone, the major congratulates them for lasting this long. But the moment doesn't last because one desperate boy suddenly runs toward a nearby building, trying to escape. He's shot down before he even gets close to the door. At 103 miles, the surviving boys start talking about what they would wish for if they actually managed to win. Baker says he'd ask for a rocket so he could travel to the moon, and Hank jokingly says he wants 10 naked women. Peter jokes that he'd wish for 2 winners instead of just one. When it's Ray's turn, he says he would want to change the entire system. The others quickly tell him that's impossible because wishes aren't allowed to directly change how the government works. Getting frustrated, the group starts shouting and cursing at the major and the whole of the long walk. That night, it rains really hard and everyone gets soaking wet. Ray is struggling to keep his eyes open, so Peter lets him lean on his shoulder to get a little bit of rest while still walking. By the time the 3rd day starts, they've already crossed 144 miles, and everyone's condition is getting much worse. During a quiet moment, Ray opens up to Peter about his past. He explains that his father used to teach him about philosophy, music, and other subjects that the government had banned. The authorities saw this kind of teaching as treason against the state. One day, the major himself came to confront Ray's father and demanded that he swear loyalty to the government and stop teaching these forbidden subjects. Ray's father refused to do it. So because of that, he was executed immediately, and finally, he dies. Ray finally reveals the real reason he joined the long walk. He wants to kill the major and get revenge for his father's death. If he wins, he's planning to ask for a carbine rifle as his prize and use it to shoot the man who killed his father. By the time they reach 170 miles, the competition becomes even more brutal. One walker who's completely drained stumbles toward the soldiers and begs them for help. Instead of helping him, the soldiers beat him down and ran over him with a tank. Shortly after that, another contestant completely loses his mind. He tears off all his clothes and starts wandering in the wrong direction. The soldiers open fire and shoot him without any hesitation. Later that night, after covering 201 miles, Stebbins comes up to Ray with terrible news. Hank is about to collapse. Ray rushes over to try to encourage him, but Hank turns away and calmly walks straight toward the soldiers. They execute him immediately, leaving everyone in shock. Baker can't control his emotions and breaks away from the group, trying to reach his fallen friend. The soldiers immediately start giving him warnings. Thankfully, before he can get himself killed, Ray grabs him and drags him back, yelling that Hank is gone, and finally he dies. The next day arrives, and the group has already passed 209 miles. The only survivors left now are Ray, Peter, Barkovich, Stebbins, Baker, and Parker. When they realize that Hank was the only one among them who had a wife waiting at home, they all agree that whoever wins needs to make sure she gets some money from the prize. None of them asks Barkovich to help out with this, which clearly makes him feel excluded from the group. Feeling left out and lonely, Barkovich approaches Ray and admits that he's been haunted by guilt over causing Rank's death. He apologizes and asks if he can be part of their group. Ray says it's okay, but soon after, Barkovich starts acting really strange. His mind begins falling apart, and in a shocking moment, he runs ahead and stabs himself in the throat. The soldiers quickly finish him off while the others, completely shaken by what they just saw, have no choice but to keep walking. That night, the exhausted group starts singing songs together to lift their spirits and help keep themselves moving forward. By the fifth day, they've already reached 278 miles, and the route now goes through the town where Ray's mother lives. Parker mentions that Ray is lucky he gets to see his mom again, but Peter says it's actually a curse because seeing her will only make things harder for him emotionally. At 286 miles, they finally arrive at Ray's hometown. One of Ray's boots completely falls apart, and Baker tells him he should take both shoes off. He warns that walking with just one boot will make his steps uneven and drain his energy even faster. Soon, Ray spots his mother standing in the crowd. At first, he just waves to her from far away, but he can't hold back his emotions. He runs toward her and begs for a hug. This reckless move gets him warning after warning, and his mother is begging him to get back in line before he gets killed. Just as the soldiers are about to shoot him, Peter yanks Ray back into the group, forcing him to keep moving and saving his life. After they pass through Ray's hometown, Peter finally shares his own painful story. He tells Ray that he's been walking for as long as he can remember, ever since losing both his parents in the war. After that happened, his uncle took him in, but the uncle beat him constantly until the uncle died when Peter was only 10 years old. After being left completely alone, Peter joined up with other kids living on the streets and survived by stealing and fighting. One fight went really badly when another boy slashed him with a knife, leaving a scar on his body. He woke up in a hospital afterward, but instead of being angry at the person who hurt him, he blamed himself. From that day forward, he made a promise to himself that no matter how dark and terrible things got, he would always try to find something good. He explains that if he wins the long walk, he wants to use the prize money to help orphan children, just like he was. Hearing this story deeply moves Ray. By the time they reach 306 miles, Stebbins warns the group that they shouldn't help each other anymore from this point on. Everyone reluctantly agrees, even though it feels cold and harsh to say. Soon after, Baker's nose starts bleeding really badly, but nobody steps in to help because of the rule they just made. Then Parker suddenly loses control. He lunges at one of the soldiers, grabs his rifle, and shoots him dead right there. Parker then does the unthinkable, and finally, he dies. That evening, Baker's nosebleed gets even worse, and Peter and Ray decide to break their rule and help him keep walking. But Baker knows he's not going to make it. He hands him a locket and begs them to give it to his grandmother if they survive. He also makes them promise not to turn around and watch when he gets executed. They try their best to keep him moving, but Baker refuses to go any further. His body gives out completely. Then the soldiers end his life in a brutal way, and finally he dies. By nightfall, the walk has reached 326 miles. Only Ray, Peter, and Stebbins are left, crossing a long bridge while the Major watches them. Ray loses his temper and starts screaming insults at the Major, but the old man just smirks and says this kind of rage is exactly the killer instinct he looked for in a winner. That's when Stebbins reveals a shocking truth. He's actually the Major's illegitimate son. He says his wish was to live in his father's house. But now his body is failing him and he can't go on. He tells Peter and Ray that it's been an honor to walk with them and wishes them good luck before he stops walking, and finally, he dies. Now only Ray and Peter remain. The rain is pouring down as they march side by side. Peter admits that when he was a child, he was terrified of dying, but after watching so many boys die during this walk, he's realized that death is the one thing that's certain in life. The only thing you get to choose is how you face it when it comes. At 331 miles, the two of them reach a town where huge crowds are cheering wildly, excited to see which one of them will survive. Peter suddenly stops walking and says he wants to give up so that Ray can win and go back home to his mother. But Ray refuses and urges Peter to keep walking, promising they'll finish this together. Peter takes a few more steps forward, not realizing that Ray has actually stopped walking behind him. Since Ray already had 3 warnings stacked against him, he was immediately executed. The soldier's bullets rip through his body. Then the major himself fires the final shot, and finally, Ray dies. When Peter realizes what happened, he completely breaks down, crying while the crowd roars in celebration, thinking this is some great victory. The major then walks up to him and congratulates him on becoming the winner of the long walk. He asks Peter what his wish will be. Struggling to hold himself together, Peter asks for a soldier's carbine rifle. He says he wants to pass it down to his future children as a symbol. The soldiers hesitate to give him the weapon, but the major insists it's fine. He says Peter won't hurt anyone because he's a good man who wants to make the world a better place. As soon as Peter gets his hands on the rifle, he raises it up and points it directly at the major. The old man tries to calm him down, telling him not to throw away his victory like this. But Peter, overcome with grief, says this is for Ray before pulling the trigger, and finally, the major dies. The Long Walk movie ends with Peter dropping the weapon, and finally, he walks alone down the rain-soaked road. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notification so you don't miss the latest recaps.